All right, welcome if this is the first time you're clicking on one of my videos, and welcome back if you've been following my journey. And if you have, perhaps you've also been following my recent dive into cross-training, shall we say, big martial knife arts. And you've watched me expand my collection of tools suitable for that, well, experiment. Or, yeah, as I've admitted multiple times, probably just an excuse for Mike to buy more big knives. But I'm also going to admit that I've always wanted a sax. Just wasn't sure which sax I should get, and because I've never owned a sax, handled a sax, in these cases, I tend to start by going affordably. Don't want to buy something high-end if I'm not sure I'm going to like it and put it to use. So based on some recommendations by some good friends, and also the time I've spent with Viking-era style swords, specifically their hilt and pommel geometry, which a lot of people find, well, uncomfortable, unusable, but I've really kind of come to appreciate. I decided to go ahead and pick up, well, spoiler in the title, the Cold Steel Chieftain sax. So let's take a look at it. Let's start with the edge. 1055 high carbon steel, which Cold Steel uses in a lot of their swords, and in my examples it's held up just fine. But when I take my test files to their swords, they rate between the 50 and the 55 HRC file, which is perfect for a sword. But this one is rating above the 55 file, below the 60, and it says they made it harder than their swords. Also shows the potential for 1055 high carbon steel. We'll see how it holds up. But, okay, so you have flat grinds that give it a pretty keen edge geometry, blade geometry anyway, but the edge itself, yeah, there is a secondary bevel on there. This is one of their made in India products, so it was probably sharpened after the fact. And yeah, secondary grind is a bit steep and it's uneven from side to side. Not shaving sharp, but all right, let's do paper. And some cardboard. Not bad, could use a little improvement. Okay, we are going to talk about this sheath when we get to carry and handling, but I wanted to give you a close-up look at it because there's a whole lot going on here. It's a nice dark brown leather that is not only laced together with a thong, but it's also stitched for added durability. Speaking of durability, you've got riveted on pretty thick sheet brass brackets for attaching these removable and adjustable straps that also have brass buckles, so you can alter your angle of carry. Now, what you're going to notice here, and this is traditional in many cases, is when it's slung this way, it's edge up, which is great for keeping your edge off whatever sheath or scabbard that it's in, and something for me as a practitioner of Japanese-style swordsmanship, yeah, that's really familiar. We'll get back to that when we get to carry and handling. But speaking of removable strap, like many other Cold Steel products, when it was shipped to me, the blade and the sheath were wrapped separately, and the straps were not on it. You had to put them on. And I found that without the straps on, there were still a lot of interesting carry options. One, you've got these straps around the sides here, so I'm thinking potentially some sort of scout carry. Also, there might be ways just to simply, shove it in a belt, wear it on a belt. We'll talk about those options. Let's talk about retention. Okay, yeah, you'll notice it's a little bit loose. And that's because, yeah, the blade widens out towards the belly here. So, depending on how you're wearing it, you might get an unpleasant surprise that if you tilt it, yeah, it does start to drop out. Now, you'll notice it catches itself. It doesn't go far. But that first couple of inches of sudden slide it's a little disturbing. But it did come with this not really a thong. It's kind of a lacquered string, and it's really long. You can use it for a lot of different things, but it's stuck up here, I'm assuming, so you could do different securing methods. So yeah, it doesn't give you that unhappy surprise. Those of you that have been following my channel know that I have, shall we say, a predilection for customizing my acquisitions. And yes, I did have ideas for modifications when I bought this, but having it in hand, I'm actually really impressed with the build and the feel of it as is. But let's take a look at it before I do anything to it in terms of, yeah, the build and the specs. And a couple of concerns I had that kept me from buying it sooner. I'm going to be looking down at my notes to give you the metric as well as the imperial measures. But let's start with the price. Best deal I found currently was less than $120 at Chicago Knife Works. I will put the link down in the description below. Still reluctant to buy it. Why? Okay, let's start with 1055 high carbon steel. Is great in their swords. Definitely proven itself durable. But how is it in a knife? All right, well, my test files say that this one is actually somewhere above 55 HRC. We'll see how it holds up. Nice flat ground, a little bit of rippling, not bad at all, though. Mirror polish, one thing I'm probably going to have to do something about. Speaking of, yeah, secondary edge bevel, not great. Probably going to need to improve that. Should be a pretty easy job. No, there's no back edge. It has the traditional Sachs broken back profile, but this one does widen out at the belly. So specifications, blade length, 13¼ inches, 34 centimeters, making it one of my longer big knives. Definitely kind of steps across that line between knife and short sword, and we'll talk about that in martial application. Width front to back, talking 1 5/8 or about 4 centimeters down here, widening out to 2 inches, about 5 centimeters up here. Blade thickness. This was one of my concerns. No distal taper, but yeah, thickness at the spine is only 4 millimeters, making it one of my thinner big blades. How's it going to hold up? We'll see. Well, let's talk about what that does to the feel of the knife. Because your overall length is 19 inches, about 48 centimeters. Your weight, 21½ ounces, 609 grams, making it, well, on the lighter end of my knives this size. With a point of balance, it's only 1 inch, 2½ centimeters ahead of the guard. So yeah, very quick in hand. We'll definitely talk more about it in applications. But, all right, speaking of handling, we're going to talk about this end. Nicely detailed brass fixtures, no egregiously sharp edges on the guard, everything's tight. There's a bit of a gap in the slot there, but it's not terrible. We'll see how it holds together under impact. Salwood grips with what they call kind of a rope or lace pattern. Everything's nice and smooth yet grippy. That grip feels really good in my hands. Medium width hands, as I've mentioned before. Speaking of which, we got to talk about that pommel. All right, when we're talking about Viking era style swords or swords, this squared off pommel shape is a make or break for a lot of people. I've learned to work with it and actually appreciate it. I do prefer the corners a little bit rounded. These aren't bad. It's also not really huge, so it doesn't get in your way that much. I've learned how to grip it and make use of it if I'm choked down. But look where my hand is when I choke down on it. You've got 4½ inches, 11½ centimeters of space in here. So you can choke up and not be, for well, a lot of your hands, unless your hand is really wide, you won't be anywhere near that. And if it comes up as a problem under impact, I will mention that. But, okay, one issue that, again, made me slightly reluctant, is probably a nitpick. As far as I can tell, we're talking about a rat tail construction, like a lot of their swords, threaded assembly, and, okay, several other reviewers have mentioned this screw head. It's probably a sleeve screw, but it's a slotted on what's otherwise a very traditional-ish looking build. I mean, they went out of their way to put a lot of traditional detail in here, and then sticking out from, not even recessed, so you're not going to notice it so much, but sticking out is a big old screw head. And yeah, why? All right, nitpick aside, I really do. Let's put it under some stress tests and see how it holds up. All right, my old friend Stab Him. Multiple layers of thick cardboard backed up by many layers of compressed brown paper bag backed up by wood. Start with a hammer grip for close range. Extend to a handshake for longer thrusting. All right, flip it around into a reverse grip, ice pick. All right, here we are post-testing. Now, these were in no way, shape, or form any kind of hard use field craft tests. It's not what my channel's about, it's not what I do. Hopefully I give you the collector's perspective and the martial practitioner's perspective, and hopefully I do it well enough that you keep watching. But I do like to run my blades through a series of quick durability tests. I'm looking for fragile edges and tips. I'm looking to see how the build holds together under impact. Is it easy to break or loosen up? And how does the tool transfer impact back into me? So my first test, stabbing and thrusting into my Pell Stab Him, which is several layers of thick cardboard backed up by a couple inches of compressed brown paper bag paper backed up by wood. So stabbed into it with a hammer grip, longer thrusts in a handshake grip, and you flipped it around into the ice pick grip. Now, I started to get a little discomfort in the ice pick grip, as you can see kind of where my hand falls and that guard kind of gets into it with those sharpish corners. That was a bit uncomfortable, but not bad. All the other grips just fine. And certainly with this grip shape and pommel, there were some concerns with not only how this build held together, but how it would feel. And the answer, spoiler alert going forward, great. So next test, took it out, struck it into hard bamboo at multiple angles, including intentionally bad ones. What am I doing? I'm looking to see if I can easily chip or roll the edge. And the answer is not at all. Also, it handled that impact well, nothing came loose, no discomfort. Actually, this knife feels really, really comfortable in hand. Moves around really well. Talk about that more in martial handling. So I got a little confident with it. Got out some hardwood boards, did a little shaving just to kind of see how it worked as a tool, which is pretty good actually, even though I can't really choke up on it or anything. It's usable. Chopped into the boards, which is not so much about what this would do to the boards, which it chopped pretty well, but looking to see how it handles impact. How's the edge hold up? How's the finish hold up? How's the build hold together? How does it transfer that back into my hand? Answer to all those questions, great. So I got a little confident. And I wasn't going to do it, but I decided to do a little bit of batoning. I was really kind of worried about that with this build, but it did exceptionally well, surprisingly well. Yeah, just kind of went right through that hardwood log where I've had some other knives struggle with that. I actually started feeling really confident with how much I could pound on this. Now, I didn't hit it like straight on the guard or the handle, but I have a blade length that I could work, quite a bit of the spine. And after just a quick wipe down, I mean, there's just not even a scratch on this. No damage whatsoever to the edge. I was concerned with the steel as well as the build. It held up really well. So, I think I'm going to do a couple things. I think I'm going to put patina on it, give it a little bit more character, take away a little bit of that shiny look, and then we'll talk about martial performance. Before we get to handling, I think I'm going to call this segment Misadventures in Carry. Why misadventures? Well, I'm wearing it right now, slung from the straps from a sword belt. The good thing about that is it's about where I would expect a sword to be. And we'll talk about how that works in drawing, but several things aren't working for me in this case. One, I did adjust the straps to try to keep the knife canted hilt upwards, but because of where its point of balance is, it's consistently pulling itself, as you can see, hilt downwards, which means as I move, it starts to slide out unless I keep it tied in. Now, martially speaking for me, when we're talking about a knife as a potential companion to a sword, well, then it becomes the backup weapon from a backup weapon, right? Something I might need to draw in a hurry under adrenaline, potentially at very close quarters. If I draw it with two hands like a sword, no problem. It draws pretty much like a short sword. And yes, here I am experimenting with some kind of variation on Japanese noto for putting it away. But I'm thinking I'm probably going to have to draw it in a hurry with one hand. And if I'm not stabilizing the sheath because of the way that belly widens out and the lack of clearance in the sheath, especially with those brass brackets in the way, what's consistently happening is this. I'll go to draw it and the belly snags about halfway through the draw. Now I can usually readjust it and get it out, but it's turning one movement into two, and under adrenaline, I'm really afraid I'm gonna fumble that. That could be a catastrophe. If I'm drawing it same side hand, and that could be because I'm reaching for it with the left hand or I'm wearing it over here on the right side, well, problem actually gets worse. If I flip my hand around, what I personally call Hickok style, I know there's another name for it, I just forget what it is. Yeah, really bad snag in the middle. Can I power through it? Yes. But, yeah, in an emergency, I really don't want to be struggling with my carry system. If I'm drawing it reverse grip, yeah, same problem. I can make it work, but I'm really not liking it. However, I think I have a good alternative. Turns out, as expected, the easy fix was already there in the design of the sheath you're getting. Though I did take the extra step, which wasn't really necessary, of reversing those detachable carry straps, wrapping them around the sheath, didn't need to do that because, as I showed you, there's already straps there. So all I had to do was thread my sword belt through those in the kind of scout carry style. And because those straps go all the way around, it gives you a lot of options. You'll see right now I'm wearing it edge down. I could flip it around edge up or left or right orientation. I could wear it more across the front of my hip, more on the side, across my back. But the other benefits to this, well, it's a little bit higher, which for me makes it easier, more natural to find, but more secure. It's not flopping around like it was before. Now you'll see that the point of balance, yes, is still trying to pull the hilt downwards, but because it's not flopping, it doesn't feel like it's trying to eject itself from its own sheath like it was before. So I feel more secure. If I was carrying it around in general, yeah, I'd probably secure it with a lanyard. But if I was expecting to need to draw it in a hurry, I would feel comfortable untying it in advance and still being able to move around and not feel like I was going to lose the knife. But because it is more secure, that unsupported one-handed draw is now snag free. What about drawing it from same side hand? Yeah, no problem. I'm really liking it. Okay, real quick before Marshall handling, you probably already noticed in the carry section that, yeah, Mike got a little carried away again with the cold blue and gave it the Nazgul Sith Lord treatment, intentionally going for an uneven, swirly, sort of rustic look, and I like the way it turned out. While I was at it, I also improved that secondary bevel, made it more slicey. But how does it handle as a Marshall tool? All right, I do intend to do a series of videos, side-by-side comparisons of the various big Marshall knives I've been collecting after I get the initial reviews out of the way, to hopefully give you a sense of which one might work best for you depending on what your practice and application is. But quick preview. You may or may not have seen a recent video I did on the APOC chop house where I converted it into this sort of buoy design, and how much I love the way this feels and moves. Now, held up side by side, you can see similarities between blade length and blade shape. If I hold them extended with my eyes closed, I do feel some similarities, but the APOC has a bit more blade presence, choppy authority. Biggest difference, however, far and away, something we're definitely going to cover in the comparison videos, is the grip. That APOC really hugs you back. When I had my daughter repeat the test for me, even though this felt a bit heavier in her hand, yeah, she really liked the security of the grip. This one, she said, made her feel nervous. Felt a bit slippy, and I can understand that. They did lacquer the wood, and it's been hot and steamy, so yeah, when hands get sweaty, I'm kind of feeling it move in ways that maybe I don't want to feel it move. Also, when I'm moving it around fast, I am therefore also sometimes colliding with sharp corners, top and bottom. Not egregiously so, but let's say it's enough to not make this my favorite, the first thing I would pick up if I had a choice. But blade length, okay, crosses that line between big knife and short sword, so you could use it in both of those capacities. Blade weight and balance, however, well, on the upside, it makes it really fast, really quick. Definitely a quick slasher, and the tip geometry makes it great for thrusting and stabbing. So it's got those things going for it. But lack of mass authority up here has a couple of drawbacks. Don't really feel very confident in the chopping, the heavy cutting. Now, it did a really nice job chopping into those hard targets, and it felt pretty good doing so. I'm liking the geometry of the sacks. Again, this is the first one I bought for myself, and now I'm thinking, well, maybe I should get myself something that's a bit more designed, purpose-built for that kind of field use. So, spoiler alert, I already ordered it. It's incoming to be continued, but back to this one. Yeah, that lightness in the blade, though it makes it fast, slashy, and quite maneuverable. A couple of other drawbacks. Using other surfaces of the blade. Could I flip it around and use it in that edge-up buoy style? There's really not much point to it. You don't have a clip point, you don't have a sharpened back edge, and there's not a lot of mass for striking with the spine. That includes having it in the edge forward grip and flipping it around and striking with the spine. I don't feel like I could do much with that. And it gets worse when I think about striking with the flat in certain techniques. That blade is so light that I don't feel like that's going to do much of anything compared to, again, some of my other knives. And that will come up in the side-by-side comparison. That also definitely applies here when we're talking about pairing. You certainly have enough blade length here to potentially use it to parry. But I think I would use it to counter cut and counter thrust because, yeah, not a lot of presence inertia. I don't feel like this could stop a heavy incoming attack. Also, yeah, you don't have much in the way of hand protection. But considering what this design is based on, the third, yeah, nobody was counting on that guard to save your hand from much of anything. You'd always pair this, usually, if possible, with a big shield to do that job. You keep the sword back behind it, covered. And I could see, well, you're already kind of seeing it, potential for this is a companion blade. If you lost that shield, didn't have it. Could you use these in conjunction? Wouldn't leave either one lingering out. If I was going to do something like that tactically, I think I would leave this one out as bait because it's fast enough to get out of the way than a heavier sword. That would be a lot more of a risk. But yeah, you could certainly see maybe how these could work together very effectively. Speaking of working together, let's reverse the equation a little bit, put this back in my primary hand. All right, so what if I enhance this with a small shield or something wrapped around my arm or another implement? I'm thinking, especially from inspiration from the culture, but also other cultures that use big knives in conjunction with, say, small axes. Small axe or tomahawk on the other hand. Oh, yeah, there could be a lot of great possibilities for that combination as well. So, many possibilities. Okay, speaking of possibility, what about reverse grip? Now, this grip is a bit stout for me to comfortably use my patented finger twirl, but the safer pinch flip, that pommel actually helps you. It just kind of gets out of your way, but also gives you a little something to grip on an index. But for me, I mentioned this already in the Pell test. Okay, so I could drop it along my forearm and use it as an emergency shield. My fingers are exposed, but if I needed to stop something from hitting me here, I might get away with a one-shot block. But I don't feel comfortable using a blade of this length in ice pick reverse grip stabbing. You might not have a problem with it. I just find these too long and awkward to do that with. So probably not going to be a way I'm going to employ the knife. And the forward grip, yeah, it's fast, it's maneuverable. It's kind of pretty and actually held together a whole lot better than I thought it would. So it's got some things going for it. I don't regret my purchase at all. I think this will make a nice addition to that cross-training equation. But before this gets too long, all right, let's get our conversation going as usual. If you have any questions about this, if you own this, other Saxes you might recommend, anything you might want to see in those side-by-side comparison tests. Otherwise, as always, thanks for watching, following my journey, subscribing to the channel, liking the videos, and I hope to see you back for, well, where this is going.